Hi team, this is one of our short videos that is designed to give you some ideas about how you can use AI effectively as a teacher. So I'm going to be talking through using ChatGPT today, but actually if you want to use Copilot, that's absolutely fine as well, and it works in a very similar way. And I think the main theme of my message today is be as specific as you can when it comes to writing prompts. So let's say you're teaching creative writing to year six, year seven, that's where I'm aiming this at. I'm an English teacher, so there might be lots of other uses if you're in another faculty, but actually the principle remains the same. So I want my kids to write a creative writing story about dragons, and I want them to see what a good introduction could look like. So I would start by saying, write a good introduction to a creative writing story about dragons. Let's see what it comes up with. So already it's changed the word from good to compelling, which is great, but you start to sort of see where it's likely to go. And it even asks you some questions. Would you like it to be in the third person or first person, a fantasy epic, a modern day humorous? So it's actually starting to give you prompts of, hey, maybe your prompt wasn't specific enough. So suddenly I want to say, well, ensure it's aimed at 12-year-olds and change the language so that it's appropriate. And it'll go back and it'll change the language a little bit. Probably not a massive amount because probably what it originally produced was pretty similar to 12-year-olds. And then you can then say, well, include at least and one simile. Because maybe your learning objectives for this lesson was to use figurative language. So then you give it that advice as well. And then suddenly we see flames curled through the clouds has been added. You'll see it caught in a moment that felt like a dream painted with fire. So suddenly we've got some beautiful figurative language and a lovely simile in there as well. So you can imagine as you're teaching it, here's an example to an introduction to the story I'd like you to write. Here's an example of a simile and an example of a metaphor. What simile or metaphor could you come up with? That could be how the lesson actually progresses. And of course, I could have written that as a prompt all in one. Create a creative writing introduction about dragons, ensure it's aimed at 12-year-olds. Maybe you do want to add the genre as it's suggested to us. It's a fantasy genre, making the language applicable to 12-year-old children, and make sure you include figurative language like metaphors and similes. And you can write that as a whole long prompt. You don't have to do it as I just did, adding bits and changing it. When you get to this point, sometimes it's quite fun to say, actually, no, you can do better. And you can tell it, make it more compelling. So you can actually give it advice like this. Let's level it up. The sky didn't just roar, it cracked open like a giant beast had torn through it. Suddenly, we've got a much more interesting story. So you can tell it to improve. If you're not working in English, you can say things like, I don't want to know the answer unless you're 90% sure. That's a specific prompt, because then it might come back and say, hey, I don't know. I can't find anything on the internet or anything that makes me 90% sure. Or yes, this is something that is definite. Obviously, the caution is it still could be wrong. It could be hallucinating, so you do need to cross-check. If you're teaching in a slightly more factual area, I've shown you some English examples, but if you're doing this for science and for mathematics, I know a couple of our teachers have already had experiences where they've used it and it's actually given them wrong information. So tell it, this is wrong information. Can you please change it? Can you please look it up? You've got it wrong. And it will learn as you go and do that going forward. The next really exciting thing is, let's say you've shown this fantastic introduction. Maybe you've also asked the kids to use it for their introduction only. And then you've said to the students, okay, carry the story on and stop using ChatGPT at that point. That could be a nice way of doing it. They can use it at the beginning, but not as we progress. So a level 1 task. Or you could use it as a level 2 task. And this means it can be used when the student has completed their work and they can actually put their completed work into Copilot or into ChatGPT and ask it, can you help improve my grammar? Can you help improve the general structure? Can you provide suggestions around the vocabulary I could be using? So that's level 2. And now we get to the point where, let's say they've finished all of their work and you think, well, I've got to mark it. How am I going to do that? Well, this is really exciting as well. Let's say you know that you want to use the Australian curriculum. So I've ticked Year 8 and English. There's the level description for your Year 8, and I'm looking in particular at text structure and organization. So I've literally highlighted this, right click to copy it. I go back into my Chat GPT and I say, create a rubric using the following information from the Australian curriculum in a 5-column style rubric. So you're marking a 5-part style, and use any other relevant information from the internet. So I've copied and pasted the stuff directly that I want to use, and you can even drag and drop a whole PDF in there if you want, but I just wanted a small amount, just the text structure and organization. But I've also said to ChatGPT, hey, if there's something more interesting on the internet or you think is relevant, you can also use that. And it goes ahead. Here's your 5-column rubric. It's using excellent, strong, sound, developing, and emerging. That might be something that you want to change. You could change it to A, B, C, D, E. And then it gives us the criteria. It's even linked the criteria to the ones that I'd copied and pasted in there directly from the Australian curriculum. So you can link that beautifully back to your Atlas plans. And it's pretty well written. It will make mistakes though. So it's really important that you're also just checking through whatever it's done to ensure you notice a mistake. For example, if you look here, it's actually included a whole row around use of language to persuade. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not teaching language to persuade. As I mentioned before, I'm teaching figurative language. We're looking at narrative writing. We're looking at that aspect. So it's got this wrong. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's because I've actually used ChatGPT quite recently with my oral exam where we're having to use language to persuade with my Year 11. So it could have picked up something from a previous chat, but that's why you need to check it through. And then you just tell it to remove the row about language to persuade and please replace it with specific reference to figurative language. And it'll do that for you. So I think it's this idea that with ChatGPT, it's not that you give it something to do and it does it and then you use it. It's much more, it's like a sort of a valuable friend, a guide on the side, somebody that you can use to say, hey, what do you think of this? They'll give you an answer. You say, oh, can you change that a little bit? It's almost like a personal assistant. So that's the best way of thinking about an LLM like ChatGPT or Copilot. You can then use the prompt, which actually asks it to turn it into a Word document for me or turn it into PowerPoint slides for me. And it'll actually create a docx or a PPT file that you can then immediately download. And the layout is often not brilliant, but at least you've got the text that you can actually start working on. So hopefully I've shown you the whole journey of how you might be using it to create a resource, a modeling resource, which can be really effective with students as a teaching resource, and then right way through to creating an assessment resource for that same task that we've been working on today. Thanks very much.